Okay, good evening and welcome to CanHammer, your stop for AOS and 40k from the Great White North. Today's show is episode 70. It is a 40k show all about some common rules, errors, and questions, as well as we're going to try a new segment, Pimp My List, where we're going to try to fix somebody's 40k list for them to make it a bit more viable. As usual, I am at CanHammer Chris on Twitter, and I'm joined from Ottawa by
Logan at OnePlusLogan on Twitter.
Awesome. So our website is canhammer.com or oneplusarmor.com if you want more information. One Plus Armor is our video network, and CanHammer is our podcast network, I guess you could say. So check those out. Now, the first thing we do every show is we get into what kind of hobby creds, what we've been up to in the hobby the last little while. So I'll hand over to you, Logan. What have you been doing since the last show?
Sure, so apart from doing a bunch of content for the channel, I've been finishing off my Tau army. So I've got 10 Kroot and 1 Riptide left to paint. Everything is now rebased, which I'm super happy with, so it's just a matter of finishing up the painting.
So you just decided to step up your, I guess, army appearance, so you wanted to rebase it. Now, what kind of process did you go through? Did you just add stuff to existing basing? Like, what colors are you basing? Where did you start? Why don't you just give us a quick overview?
Sure. So when I started with that army, basically I just had the normal bases, flat, no cork or anything on it, and I painted them brown, put a little bit of sand flock, a little bit of grass flock, like static grass, and that was it. And it looked okay. Not great, but like not good. And then after going to Du Bois this year and getting absolutely massacred on my hobby score, I figured it was time to step up my game a bit. So for all of my units, I either pulled them off their bases and put them on brand new ones, or I just scraped what I could off the base and started fresh. And effectively what I've done instead is I take the base, cover it in glue, put an entire layer of sand flock on top of it, let it dry, spray it black, then dry brush that brown, let it dry brush it very, very lightly with some gray, like a Dawnstone or something. Maybe not necessarily on the whole thing, but in a lot of places, just to give it sort of like a weathered dirt look. And then from there, do a little bit of flock in some areas. I've got some of the grass tufts from GW. I'll put those in. And in some of the other bases, I've done more like scenic poses for the guys. I took apart a couple models and reposed them. So they're like, they've got one leg up on a piece of ruins, or they're standing on some cork rocks, stuff like that. So a lot more dynamic and a lot more realistic, perhaps.
Yeah,
if you can use that word.
You know, and it's not a bad thing to never be completely finished with an army, especially if it's like your baby, like you're basically committed to Tau for several years now. So,
yeah,
like that's what you want to be competitive with. There's no shame in going back and doing things that check boxes, right? Instead of getting the lowest tier check mark of like for paint scoring at a tournament, now you might get the middle or high tier, right?
Exactly. What about you? What have you been working on?
So I've been just working on my Eldar. Standard stuff, you know, everybody would know I kind of dipped the army and then I'd be going back through and highlighting it. So I had a tournament on the weekend, so I wanted to get some of my stuff ready for that. And I started it. I was doing a test bike, get them all highlighted up. I went I think it ends up being 4 shades on it, a little bit of a stark highlight, which is usually my style, so it sticks out a little bit more. Not as smooth, so the closer you get to my figures, the more, I guess, liney or blotchy they look, but they look generally pretty good from a distance. So I got one model completely done and nice test, like, it's not a test model, but I got them fully completed. I was like, okay, now I know basically the pattern. And so what I like to do is I like to figure out what kind of shapes I like to highlight the front of the bike. So if, like, depending on where the gems or the kind of the ridges are, you want to be consistent in where you draw your lines and how you highlight it so they kind of look the same. So I was kind of figuring out, you know, how to move my brush over the figure, and then once you get that pattern done, you can just replicate it really fast on the other 20 bikes or so. So I got that guy done. Then we went to a tournament, Jason and myself, and we get there, we set up our army, and that one fig that I had done, he picked up to look at it, dropped it, went to kind of catch it with his foot, and kicked it, and went off the wall and shattered into like a million pieces.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was like ridiculous. So we went to L'Abyss, which is a hobby store in Montreal. We played in a 40k doubles, which is supposed to emulate the Long War doubles tournament that's going to happen at Adepticon. So we used 3 of their scenarios, which is pretty sweet. I tweeted a whole bunch of pics. If you want to go on my Twitter at CanHammer Chris, you can see pics of our games and the scenarios that we played and whatnot. So we were like, is there any comp on this event? And they're like, well, you have to take a battle forged army, and and then of course Jason's like, well, the definition of a battle forged army is I just have to take detachments. So I'm going to take 3 Wraith Knights. And then he couldn't get 3 Wraith Knights into his 1,000 points. So he took 2, I took 1. The rest of our army was like warp spiders and bikes. We pulled up to game 1. We got the warlord trait of +1 to seize. And we're like, we'll go second. But because we had 3 Wraith Knights, normally Eldar, you just want to go second. You reserve everything. You say, screw it. We come on. We hose you. But we had 3 Wraith Knights. So if we got first turn, we could like really do damage. Like 6 D cannons kills a lot. And I seized. I rolled the 5+ that we needed to seize. And that was it. So I seized. Boom. We ended up getting a perfect win. And then round 2, we played the tournament organizer who wanted to practice for the Long War tournament. That's why he ran it.
Yeah.
And their army. We did not seize against them, but they took first turn. So we null deployed, put everything off the board, 3 Wraith Knights on the board, which is a common tactic because the Eldar stuff is way more fragile than people will think. So by keeping it all off the board, 3 Wraith Knights, they had like no viable targets.
Yeah.
And we literally measured, okay, past 24 plus 6 is 30 plus a few extra inches for the fudge factor. So Pask was not shooting. And we just made sure that everything was in cover. And they basically shot us, did like 2 wounds on Wraith Knights, and that was it. Summoned some demons. We bumped up, killed Pask, and just kind of hosed them. It was one of those scenarios though, where you scored at the end of your turn, so it was like really easy to both tie.
Yeah.
And it was like, so turn 1, if you did this, you got 2 points. Turn 2, if you did this, you got, and they're always different. And so like we shut them down turn 1, and then we both basically got all the rest of the points. So it ended up being like 17-12 because we would have got 20, but we ran out of time. But it was kind of a weird scenario. So like it was possible for 2 people to play each other and get perfect. It was super strange, but anyway, they were the next team below us. So going into the last round, we were basically in the lead by a lot. I want to say like 7 or 8 points out of a possible 70. So, that's decent. And then last round, we played a Chaos Space Marine army. We did the same thing. We deployed way back, so nothing was in range. We did all those safe measuring. If you move your max, you can never shoot anything but 3 Wraith Knights. And so they said, okay, they were pretty much like, we're in trouble. And we were like, yeah, sadly, Demons, Chaos Marines can't handle 3 Wraith Knights and bikes. But, if those Demon Princes get in the air, and there's a lot of things they could do. They had a Hell Drake, so they could actually do some serious damage to us if played. And then they look at me and they're like, oh, you guys want to seize? And we're like, well, we don't mind going second, but I guess we have nothing to lose. And then I rolled the 6, seized. That's 2 out of 3 games. The one guy, and I go to Jason, I said, that one Demon Prince right there, we kill him. He's like, why? There's other and I was like, no, because once he goes up in the air flying, we can't deal with him. You can't kill a Nurgle Demon Prince flying. Like, if you do, you're lucky. Like, we just can't deal with that. So we just nuked him. It took all of our firepower, because of course he jinx, and we didn't get any 6s on the D, or maybe Jason did, but it was like our last shot with it or something. But it was like, our whole army went into him and stayed out of shooting range. And then they couldn't do anything, of course. Shoot like a template out of Wraith Knight, whatever. And then our next turn, we basically hosed everything. So they had like a Space Marine squad and a Rhino left. 3 of those Slanesh Beasts, Fiends.
Yep.
And 1 Plague Fly. And then the Hell Drake in reserve. And they ended up tapping out and giving us full points. Because, let's face it, one more turn, they were done. We lost 1 bike. The entire game, so it was pretty rude.
That's rough.
But like we told them that going in, they said like I kind of knew the guy from a previous tournament. He recognized that I'm also a Chaos Space Marine player, and he liked my old Chaos Army that I was playing with before. But it was like we told him that we said like we literally brought something to win because we normally play ITC. So if we don't bring 3 Wraith Knights now, like Jason has 2 Wraith Knights that sit on his shelf forever. And so we didn't apologize or anything. We just said we brought the rudest stuff imaginable to do this.
Yeah.
And we won by such a margin and we were like, 20 minutes into our last game, and of course we're the only out of towners. We live an hour and a half away or so. Well, he lives 2 hours, I live an hour, I guess we'll say that. So they actually let us. They told the store owner that we won the tournament. They let us pick out our prizes and leave an hour and 40 minutes before the end. So we missed the awards ceremony, but there was a time when we're driving because it took Jason a while to pick out what awards he wanted. But we're driving down the road, and I look at my watch, and I'm like, I bet you they're just doing the awards now. And he's like, yeah, and I'm like, they're probably just like those damn Anglophones come here with their favorite nights. And so it was a funny moment, a really good tournament. I guess shout out to Dom for running it. It was casual store tournament. He played in it. It was super fun. Lunch was included, decent prizes. La Abyss is a really nice store. We've talked about it before.
Mhm.
It's downtown Montreal. They have selection like you wouldn't believe. And if you play in their tournaments, you get a 5% discount,
Nice.
which is pretty nice. And they had I ended up picking up some like fine cast stuff and some paints, and they had really awesome selection, and they had some decent older figs. Like anybody looking for a unit of oh man, what are the blue Eldar bikes called? The Lances.
The Shining Spears?
Shining Spears. They have like 9 of them on the shelf. I was like, geez, like you can direct order them, but I'd rather buy them here if you're going to pay retail. Just
Yeah.
because the store owner's a good guy. And the store, well, the guy that was working there, I don't know if he's the owner or not. He was like into Eldar, so he was like always asking me about my army and lists and how warp spiders worked. And that was the thing too. Warp spiders could jump unlimited in that event, and D was uncomped and invisibility. So like, these guys just didn't. It was afterwards. It was Jason's first ever tournament win, but afterwards he was like, "Dude, we brought a gun to like a hammer fight,"
Yeah. Yeah, seriously.
But that's we said that going in, and we even brought multiple lists, and we asked them. We said, "This is the list we want to take. Are we allowed?" Like it seems ridiculous that it got through the comp, and they said, "Well, when we go to Adepticon, we might have to play against that, so we might as well see what it's made of."
Yeah, the Long War Doubles is totally uncomped.
Which is fun, but you all have to bring that stuff, right?
Yeah, they're like
ITC
50%
lowers the
hobby
higher
score.
stuff.
Yeah, they're 50% hobby score or something for that event. So even if you bring filth, you may not win.
That's like they had no painting or sportsmanship.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Not that like all our opponents were great guys, so but yeah, like and our army was fully painted too, so it wasn't a big deal. We had lots of free hand and stuff too, so I think we had a good shot at it going in. But I'm happy with a win's a win.
Yeah.
And I did feel bad doing it. I wanted to bring like a newbie, but Jason, he was hungry for his first tournament win, and we achieved it.
Congratulations.
So that's that. I got home from that. I've been ordering just basing product for my Age of Sigmar army, and we've been trying to work out the P&P pack, not P&P, Swords and Magic pack for AOS. So I'm getting my brother. He's kind of has a foot in AOS, so I've been spending a lot of time like trying to get him to make an army list for that event. So that takes time, right? Just talking strategy and getting like a newer player up to speed with what he should take, as opposed to like and what I'll paint for him and what I won't paint for him to get an army out.
Yeah.
So that's been basically taking up all my time. So I guess that's it for the hobby. Anything of note other than that?
No, don't think so.
Cool. So I guess we'll go straight into the news.
Yeah.
The news has been a lot. So we kind of took a Christmas break, but we did record like an echoey show that we released last week. We're gonna fix that out. Nick's house just echoes like crazy. We're gonna have to go into a different room next time we're there.
Go down to the basement.
Yeah, go in the basement, close some of the doors. But we're trying to get more and more variety of content. We're also working on getting show notes for future episodes that correspond to guests that are good with those topics. So Logan and I have spent some time getting this format down, getting the Twitch down, getting the podcast back up and running and running smooth. And then now we're looking to kind of expand out and get some more experts on here and there. So, that takes all kinds of time and stuff like that. But in the AOS news, the army bundles came out. So do you want to just talk about all the army bundles up front?
Yeah, let's get them all together, because these things are awesome.
So what came out is Khorne, Nurgle, Slaves of Darkness, Tau, Skitarii, Astra Militarum, Space Marines, Nids, and Necrons.
Yep.
Now, these are box sets that came out that are for the GW new theme, which is New Year, New Army.
Yep.
And so these are starter sets that cost $100 Canadian, right? Or 97 Canadian.
85 US, 100 Canadian, thereabouts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're pretty good, and they're available at all retailers. It's not a GW only thing.
Oh
So if you have
wow.
a discount retailer that you do buy from, they had them for sale at Labis at the tournament.
Are you kidding? So if you've got like there are local stores that'll give you, 15-20% off sometimes. That's an insane deal.
Yeah, which we'll
So
talk about in a minute. We'll talk about in a
yeah,
minute. But
yeah.
so those came out, and then so this is supposed to be. I've been getting into some not arguments on Twitter, but people have been like, "Oh, GW, they're blah blah blah," and I said, "Well, like this is just a money grab," and I'm like think about it. A new CEO took over January 2015. Now, it generally takes a year for the new CEO's practices to kind of, take effect. So my theory, which is not based in fact, which I might have said before, is that this is like the start of the new guys getting new blood back into the hobby.
Yeah.
There was that rumor that the new CEO said, I forget his name, but that he was actually pissed off that he went into a GW and couldn't buy a model for £10.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so this is the start to that. So Logan, how much? So we said they cost $100.
Yeah.
Now is that a deal or is that not? Because GW historically does not give deals.
It is an amazing deal. So that's not to say that GW has gotten rid of their bundles to save you a click, but these things are outstanding. The Tau Army is $170 retail if you buy it all separately. It's $100 with this, and that is not far off from the other ones. Most range in the value of 150 to 170 range. So
And
getting
it has
these
the
for
limited
100,
edition ethereal, right?
yeah, the Tau one has a limited edition ethereal. The Space Marine one, I want to say, has one of the limited edition captains.
But it's the
Uh,
worst one, I think, the Space Marine.
Either way,
It's a dreadnought, a tactical squad, and a
oh yeah,
captain.
it's not a like good competitive thing to buy by any means, but the rest are actually decent. But the value is just absolutely outstanding. Like
Yeah.
to use the Tau one as an example, you get I think it's 3 crisis suits, a unit of fire warriors, and an ethereal. The crisis suits on their own in Canada are $90. You spend $10 and you get a full unit of fire warriors, which is I think 40 Canadian, and a limited edition ethereal that you can't get outside of the Burning Dawn box. But even if you were to buy him separately, I think he's $30.
And like, if you think about it, that talent, people are like, oh, I don't really use Crisis. But if you're gonna play Tau, you're gonna have one unit for that odd tournament where you need
Yep.
them for some solo objective scorers. It's not a bad
It's a good thing to have. Very good thing.
one
to
of,
have.
right? That's the
Yeah.
one that we'd have one of. Now, the Space Marine one, you would never buy more than one of, I don't think. The Astra Militarum one's pretty good. You could have multiples, get a nice squadron of Leeming Russ, lots of infantry, some characters.
Yeah.
It's pretty solid. But the Scutaria one's the one that screamed out for me. It's you're
Yes.
saving $70, which is one of just up with the Tau. You're saving a lot of money, and it's a fantastic. Like you could definitely use three of them for any Scutari army.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Now it has two duplicate characters, but you just sell those guys off
Yeah,
or
sell
use
them,
them as
convert them.
conversions.
Yeah, exactly. And I haven't taken a super close look at the Age of Sigmar ones, other than the Nurgle one, and the Nurgle one is an outstanding deal as well. It's, if I remember correctly, it's 3 plague drones, a unit of plague bearers,
Yep.
a herald, and I think there's Nurglings in there as well.
There is Nurglings, yes.
Yeah,
It's actually it's a good deal for any demon player
Yeah,
in 40k
it's an
or
incredible
less.
deal. I mean, the Herald is $30 or 35. The Plague Bearers are 35 or 40, and the Plague Drones I think are 80 in Canada.
Yeah, the plague drone's the real. It's like you're getting.
Yeah.
It's like anything. You're buying the premier unit and then getting, not optimal in all cases, but supplementary figures to go with it. And then the awesome part about these is every one of them comes with a special formation inside that makes them viable.
Yeah, some more than others, but yeah,
It doesn't matter. It's the fact that
you can take it and
this is
play
the
with
first time you can go into a GW store,
it. Yeah,
buy a heavily discounted box, and play with a legal army.
yeah, absolutely. You are entirely right, and it's really good for that. And with that said, some of the formations are actually really good. Like the Necron,
Necron one is,
has,
is the best one.
has a
yeah.
lot of potential. Yeah, some of the other ones are a little. I don't want to say badly written, perhaps. Like the Tau one has problems, but the Necron one in particular is actually really good. You basically get units brought back to life. for
Yeah, if you
reasons.
kill one of his units, you have to kill his lord. Basically, it's kind of like an assassination tile. It's a pretty sweet thing. Cool. So that's about it for army bundles. I think we're gonna give it 3 thumbs up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Yes, many thumbs up. As many
Many
thumbs as
thumbs
we
up.
can give.
Yeah, this is a step in the right. As we've been saying, we're not. I'm a fanboy. Logan's actually a pessimist, but GW's been making very few blunders. We're not saying they're getting like they're fixing everything, but it seems like every step is a step in the right
Yeah,
direction.
agreed.
So cool. So we're going on. They released the new dwarves. They're sorry, the new Duardins, the Fire Slayer models, which are basically mercenaries style for the good guys. They're in the AOS. They leave a lot to be desired. Some of the figures, they're
Yeah.
some are absolutely fantastic. Some are not. They have a new big monster, which is basically a giant lava lizard that a dwarf's riding. Now that one hasn't been released or up for pre-order yet, but the infantry has. So I guess we'll start off by going through some of that. So the first one is they have his character, the Auric Rune Master. What do you think of him model-wise, Logan?
Model wise, I'm going from memory. I don't have the pictures right in front of me.
He's the guy
But
with like the lantern on a rod, and he's got like one arm back with an axe. And he looks very Spartan, like
yeah,
from
I remember him
300.
being pretty cool. I know he caught my eye. Some of the other sculpts are a bit iffy, but the character one is solid. I remember that much.
Yeah. So there's three types of boxes. There's this guy who's the hero on his own. I think he's fantastic. Now they did remove the mustache from him, so he's got a neck
Oh,
beard.
he's the neckbeard.
Yeah, he still looks great. Still looks
Everything
fantastic.
about that model is good except the neckbeard.
I like the neck beard. I don't
Oh
know.
man, you just need to model a little green stuff fedora on his head.
Yeah, so he's a wound 6, 4-inch move, 4 plus save, bravery 8 model, which isn't terrible. He's got a throwing axe with an 8-inch range, 3 plus 4 plus 1 damage. He's got a runic um, iron, which is a range 1-inch, 2 attacks, 3 plus 4 plus 1 damage. So all in all, he's not super amazing in the damage department.
Yeah.
Now, my biggest issue with him is that he's a reach of a 1-inch, and he's on a 32 millimeter base, as are all the
Yeah.
other ones.
Yeah.
So he cannot fight through like a dwarf wall. He has to be on the front,
Yep.
which kind of makes sense because they're like the new Slayers. But that it kind of frustrated me a little bit. Now, one thing that he is he's like a holy seeker of gold, and so basically your opponent picks one of their own units, and this is actually written very well. I like the way they did this, so I'm just going to read it to you guys. Your opponent can reroll wounds roll of a 1 for that unit, but if the Rune Master is within 10 inches of it at the end of any of your movement phases, he spots a telltale glint and gives a triumphant cry. For the rest of the battle, add 1 to the attacks the characteristic of any weapon used by the Fire Slayer to attack that unit. Now, that's not the one that I think's written well, but that's this first rule.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically give a buff. Your opponent picks one of his units, it gets a buff, but then, of course, you get a buff if you get this guy near him at any movement phase. So it's pretty cool. It's fluffy, thematic. I kind of don't like that they're still looking for gold, but they are Duardin. The next one this is the one that I thought was written quite well for GW standards. Basically, you pick a terrain feature within 20 inches and roll a die for each model within 1 inch of it. For each roll of a 6, that model's unit suffers a mortal wound. And the reason I say that's really well written is that that's clear.
Yeah.
So you measure, because most things in 40k are like, if a model's within 1 inch, roll a die, and on a 6 they take a mortal, like they take a wound or something, right?
Yeah.
It's not clear. Whereas this is like, measure the guys within an inch or within that terrain feature, and then for every 6 you get, it goes on their unit, not on the models. Because that used to always kind of frustrate me, right?
Yeah.
In 40k, there's a lot of discrepancies with that, where you roll for individual models, and the game isn't about rolling for individual models.
Yeah, fantasy had a lot of that too.
Yeah,
Things like Final
even
Fantasy
AOS
Station
has a
and
lot of
whatnot,
things like that, right? Whereas that, I was like, wow, that's actually a very clear one sentence.
Yep.
Cool. So the next one is they have Volkite Berserkers. They're movement 4, 5 up save, 7 bravery. They have 2 different options. And, all the weapons in AOS are samey. Range of a 1 inch, even though the unit's on 32 millimeter bases, which of course poses problems. It means you're going to want a unit with either really wide frontage or that's very small, because you'll never need to double rank them. You're basically not having a formation with these guys.
Yeah.
Their cool thing is that on a 6, they continue to fight. So if you kill a guy on a 6, he doesn't die. And then if you get 10 or more of them, you add +1 to that result, and if you get 20 or more, you add +2 to that result. And so the logic behind that is they just keep fighting on, and like they won't die as long as there's other ones fighting. They're kind of embarrassed to die,
Nice.
which I thought was pretty cool. And they have some other cool rules. Now they also, and then they have, so those are like, that's the, I do believe that's the 10-man model pack. And then they have the Hearthguard and the Hearthguard Berserkers, which is, they come in units of 5 when you purchase them.
Yep.
They're like the elite infantry, they're a bit more expensive. Similar stats, 5+ save, 4-inch move. The Hearthguard have a bravery of 7, and the Berserkers have an 8. The Hearthguard are really cool. They have molten rock bolts, which basically, at the end of the shooting phase, for each monster that was wounded, on a 5 or more, it is encased in rapidly cooling stone until the end of the next turn, half its movement, and subtract 1 from any hit rolls of its attacks.
Not bad.
So you could like shut down a Glockcan, or Archeon doesn't have the monster keyword, does he? He might. But you could shut down any of the monsters in the game with that. Now the range of that is only 15 inches, 2 attacks, 4+, 3+, rend 1. So it is a very powerful shooting attack, and it's geared towards monsters. I could definitely see throwing a unit of these in your sideboard, waiting for an opponent with a monster heavy force.
Yeah.
Then they have the Hearthguard Berserkers, and they ignore a wound on a 6+, just like the other Berserkers, except they only need a hero nearby to add +2 to the result. So they're kind of like, they guard a hero's life, so they won't die if there's a hero nearby, which is kind of cool. And they have all the same stuff. They have slightly better attacks than the 10-man unit, which would be the Volkite Berserkers, but it's pretty cool. I just didn't want to go through word by word, so hopefully that's a good enough summary. Any questions, Logan? Or
Not about the AOS stuff.
No, nothing at all. So I think that's it for AOS releases, was just the Duardin infantry. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is we covered earlier that they have this new fire lizard. The name escapes me, and I didn't write it down in the show notes, which I'm looking at. What do you think of that new fire lizard in the dwarf range?
So I've only seen the 2 pictures of it that look like they were from Warhammer World or Forge World or something. But it looks cool. I think it's a really badass looking model. So I'm excited to see it in a bit more detail and in higher resolution.
Yeah, I absolutely think it's fantastic. It makes sense. They're underground. These are fire monsters. You know, they're no longer the dwarves of Tolkien. They're Warhammer Age of Sigmar dwarves. So get these notions aside that dwarves walk into big infantry and get mowed down, even though their lives are precious and they wear all this armor that apparently does nothing in the fluff. They're not the Tolkien dwarves. They're not the high fantasy. This is Age of Sigmar. It's going to be a world of monsters and magic. So kind of deal with it, right? Cool. So on to 40K news. I'll hand it over to you, Logan.
All right. So for the most part, there is no 40K news. It's just the army bundles, as far as I can see anyway. That said, Forge World did come out with some new stuff on the 30K side. Corvus Corax, the Raven Guard Primarch, is out. The sculpt looks pretty great, apart from the massive shit-eating grin on his face.
I don't like him at all. The wings are terrible, I thought.
Oh yeah, I think it looks.
They're like cool. They're like metal bird wings that are very like square, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind I'm not a fluff bunny by any means, but he looks like super emo, so I figured the shitty wings sort of fit for it.
Corax isn't really emo though.
Well, again, I don't know the fluff, but I mean from the model, it's that's the impression I get. But he also comes with the Dark Fury Assault Squad, which is a pretty cool looking assault squad, specifically for Raven Guard. So some cool new sculpts from them. The only other news really that I was able to come across here is that Mantic has a new model line out now, or a new army out. So they've finally gotten their Forces of the Abyss sort of released.
What are the Forces of Abyss?
It's basically the equivalent of fantasy demons.
Okay.
So they've got succubi, they've got lesser abyssals, which are basically bloodletters, Ifrits, which are like flamethrower dudes. As heroes, they've got demon prince things, dragon ogre style stuff. The sculpts are better than some stuff Mantic has done. They're in an awkward spot. Like they're better than GW stuff was in the late 90s for sure, but they're a lot worse than the late 2000s to now. So it's better than their previous stuff. It's trending in the right direction. The models look pretty cool. They're still a little bit cartoony, But they look like they go together well and they're well done. So I'd say it's about on par with the undead range for the most part.
Okay.
Like they look solid.
That's the
And
thing. I find Kings of War, some are up, some are down. Like
yeah,
they arguably own the best zombies
yeah, but then they
miniatures
have the
ever.
worst elves, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the worst elves.
Yeah, but the thing that's really cool about this, if you're looking to get into Kings of War, you can buy an entire army for $175. You get like 2 hordes, 4 regiments, 2 or 3 heroes, a bunch of little harpy units, a couple Ifrits. It's really well priced. So check that out if Kings of War is your thing.
Yeah, it's cool. I always thought about getting a Kings of War army. Some friends of mine, they play it and they have a podcast on it and things like that. And, you know, it's just if I had the time, I think I'd pick one up. But I'd want to do a Kings of War army, not a Warhammer Kings of War army. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you.
But anyway, I'm going to stop you there for a sec. We're going to save this file so people in the live stream give us 30 seconds. There is a popping sound coming from you, Logan.
Let me tweak my mic a little bit. Give me
It's going like
a few
ding,
minutes
ding,
here.
ding, 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 ding. Is this your new mic? Like it's kind of like a ding, 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 like still going. Well, that was me. That's better. Yeah, that's definitely better.
All
Cool.
right.
So I'm gonna start the recording again.
Give me 1 second. Stream folks, let me know how the audio level is for me. I think it should be okay, but we'd had to do some changes.
Oh, it's back.
Okay, I haven't changed anything. Let me swap over to my other headset. Hold on.
Could it be me? Is that better?
I gotta change the mic over.
Yeah, sorry guys, in the live chat, you're seeing some behind the scenes action right now.
All right, how's that, Chris?
You sound completely different, but yeah, there's no noise. Yeah,
Okay, let's just go with that then.
yeah, you sound fine. I think it would be an adjustment because if they were listening to your previous voice, but so I'm gonna stop the recording.
Just
Delete.
know we
file.
had some technical difficulties.
Okay. Cool. So we're back to talk about some upcoming events. This segment focuses on events that are about 4 weeks out with a few other announcements. You may notice that Logan's voice will change slightly due to some mic interruption, but hopefully it's not too terrible. It sounds fine to me.
Good.
So the first one is what, Logan?
We got the Big Boys Broken Bones tournament coming up on January 28th in Ottawa. It's a 16-man event with a really big prize pool. First place takes home $400 worth of tax-free store credit at FTB. So that is sold out with... Actually, no, I think there's one spot open for it right now. So
Yeah,
if
the
you're
waiting list
interested-
disappeared.
Yeah, so if you're interested, hop in. It is an expensive entry for a one-day tournament. It's $40, but it's all 100% of entry goes straight into the prize pool.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna bring in the cheat. I have like this new combo too that I haven't even told Logan about that I'm bringing.
Ooh.
So if you want to see like this new, I want to do a segment on it, but I'm waiting until I test
till
it out
after
at this
the
event
event.
because
Yeah.
I want to win the event. And then if Logan knows my strategy, he might beat me.
Oh, I'm not playing in that one, but I'll,
Oh, you dropped out?
I was never in it, but I'll stop by. A lot of people are coming, but I've got some other stuff going on that day.
Yeah, Yoshi's gonna play in it.
Yep.
Cool. And then what's after that? We have the Petawawa tournament.
Yeah, so I think February 6th or 7th, there's a small tournament going on up in Petawawa. They have a really fun gaming group up there at a great store called Perkins Hobby House. It's
I love that store.
1,500 points, really no comp other than no Unbound, so should be a good time. It's a 2-hour drive. They're the closest place for good donaire, so going up there, play Warhammer for a day, grab some donaire, and drive home.
Yeah, it's because the army base. I guess they'd have Donaire for that, right?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Like you would want to bring a softer army, right? Or would you just bring?
Oh, hell no.
No, bring something rough.
Bring the ultimate filth to their events. They don't play soft. Like, they're not hyper competitive guys, but they'll put the filthiest stuff they can on the table. Like, I'm expecting to fight a lot of knight armies, a lot of jet bikes, a lot of everything.
Okay, 4 minutes it is. After that, we have a big special announcement. This one's not 4 weeks out. CCBB is going to go live in the next few days slash weeks. If you're listening to this on iTunes, it's probably pretty close to the site going live. So you can go to capitalcitybloodbath.blogspot.com for more information on that. Do you have anything to say, Logan?
Yeah,
Actually, Logan did join the team. We should say that. He
yeah,
is now an official owner of the convention.
yeah. I'm a voting member. Let's put it that way.
Voting member, that's
Yeah.
better.
So we actually do have a full domain for it. So it's just capitalcitybloodbath.com. You can go to as well, and that takes you straight to the site. A
Yes.
lot of the info is already up there. We do not have players packs yet, but all the pricing, which is likely going to change before it goes live. But a lot of the tournament information, the dates, the venue location, the tentative schedule, all that stuff is already up there if you want to start making plans around it.
Yeah, some of the smaller events are going to go down in price now that we have a finalized budget. We kind of put them a little bit higher, so some will stay the same and some will go down, right?
Yeah, so it's a three-day event this year. Friday is doubles events and a couple War Machine things, Batman miniatures game, X-Wing miniatures game. The Friday is not catered, but the Saturday and Sunday events, the ones that are 2-day tickets or are feature events, meaning not War Machine Iron Arena, I think is the one that isn't, all have catered lunches included, and the food is top-notch.
Yeah, it was really good last year. We had lots of comments about our food. The venue's fantastic. It'll be 40K in AOS. We are going for the 6-game format. AOS may end up being 7 or 8. We don't know. It depends on the time frame with the
Yep.
Clash comp and the amount of players that we get. So if you really want to support AOS, I would sign up for that for sure because it might be one of the last big GTs in Eastern Ontario for AOS. So hopefully we can get some people out to do that. But it's an awesome time. We're trying to grow it into a convention, so our numbers should theoretically double with War Machine players, and we're just trying to get more and more games in. There might be a Guild Ball like free tournament
Yeah,
just
some
for some
demo
people to have
tables.
some fun. For sure, if you just want to come up, if what's the dates of it again, Logan?
It's August 19th to the 21st. And
Yep.
the other thing is we will be featuring the Gamer Garage sale again.
Yeah, which is so you can bring all your old stuff, and our staff will sell your models. You just write down how much you want for it, and then you write down how low you're willing to negotiate. They will drive a hard bargain for it, and then we do take a very small cut as like a donation to the convention. But it's a great place to get all your stuff sold and to buy some new models. It's really cool. One of the other major things that we like to do is like we kind of wanted to build it more into. I shouldn't have said it that way, but we want to kind of build it more into a convention this year. So we would encourage people, if you want to come up, to take the Friday off, which is the 19th. Come down Thursday night. You can play an all-day doubles tournament. Now, if you can't take the Friday off and you want to, let's say, drive up on, like, let's say you take the Friday off, but you can't come down Thursday night or something, you leave Friday morning. The Batman and X-Wing tournaments start in the late afternoon or
Yeah,
early afternoon.
early afternoon. Yeah,
2
but I think
p.m.
we start at like between 12 and 2. Yeah.
Yeah, so you could like drive up from Toronto in the morning and then play a light Batman X-Wing tournament. You can't do both. And if you play in the doubles, you can't play in Batman or X-Wing, but you're playing doubles 40K or AOS, so who cares? It'll be awesome. So we're really trying to get it more into a less rushed weekend, lots of games, and hopefully it's a good time.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, even from running it. Should be a blast. It was a lot of fun last year and the year before, so it's only going to
Yeah,
get better.
and every piece of we're hoping to upgrade everything from a little bit of the train to some of the way that we run things to the website, the way that we sell tickets. Where basically every year we're just trying to get everything better. So, yeah, if you have any feedback or comments, let us know. So I guess we're going to take a quick break, maybe 1 minute, and then we'll be back to talk about our main segment, which is rules, issues, and chat Q&A. Okay, so now those of you that are in the live chat, you would have seen just we were kind of behind the scenes there a little bit. We're going to try to get a bit smoother with some transitions coming up. But this segment is going to be rules issues and chat Q&A. So we've been collecting questions from people on Twitter, I get a lot of emails, questions from people that I try to answer, and sometimes I do a terrible job, sometimes I do a great job. And we thought that we would answer some of them now. If you do not hear your question being answered, there's a chance that it was either too long, and we're going to develop it into a show topic for a future episode.
Yep.
Cough cough. Caleb, he wants a top. He had questions about like the movement phase and how to deploy your men and move them. And we felt that that's just too much to answer in this segment. And a few people, Kieran from Toronto, asked some pretty inappropriate questions that we're just not going to put up. So,
Yes, he does.
we filtered that. So, keep that in mind. Kieran's a friend of ours, so of course he knew that that wasn't going to happen. But first question is from Yoshi from Toronto. Can an autark with a warp jump generator flicker jump? That's question part number one. Even if he is in a unit of warp spiders, so if he joins a unit of warp spiders, does he gain the flicker jump rule? And could another character, I added this part, like Raw, join a unit of warp spiders and do the flicker jump? So I'm just going to quickly, warp spiders have a warp jump generator, which is basically a jetpack. It also allows them to move 2d6 plus 6 inches in the movement phase. Mm-hmm. And when they're shot at, warp spiders, they have a rule called flicker jump, which basically means they get to jump away from the enemy for free, 2d6, every time they're shot at, unless you play ITC, in which case it's one time only. So Logan, can an autark with a warp jump generator flicker jump?
Short answer, absolutely not. Long answer, I can very easily see where the confusion comes from for this. So,
I would say if he's on his own, he cannot.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Because he does not have the flicker jump rule in his profile.
Exactly. So that rule only exists for warp spiders, or warp spider units.
If he joins the warp spiders and they are shot, can they jump away?
The warp spiders can, while they maintain coherency with the character who cannot. And the reason for that is in the rules for independent characters, there's a very specific clause that states that unless the rule specifically states that it applies to characters who join or other parts of the unit, not just the unit that has the rule, the independent character specifically does not gain that rule. So the example it gives is the stubborn rule. For the wording in stubborn, which is very similar to things like hit and run, tank hunters, all that kind of stuff, it specifically says if one or more models in this unit have this rule. On the contrary, the flicker jump rule says when this unit is shot at, it may jump. Flicker jump is a special rule for the warp spider unit. Going straight word from word, it is a special rule for the unit. Does not say specifically that only one model in the unit has to have it for everything to get it. Then that lines up exactly with the independent character's ruling that says that unless it specifically confers, it does not. So,
agreed.
You are then left with a scenario where a character with a warp jump, flicker jump cannot jump, nor can Raw if he joined. The wording for it, I can't give you verbatim off the top of my head, but effectively the way flicker jump works is when the unit is targeted, they can immediately make a warp jump of 2d6 inches in any direction.
Yes.
But then they can't use their warp jump in the following turn.
Yeah. So but the character could because he could warp jump.
Because he wouldn't have warp jumped, yeah.
Because he wouldn't have flicker jump, but he stays put. So you could still do some crazy stuff with it if you really wanted to, but...
Yeah. So where the confusion comes from on this, and I appreciate and I understand this, but it's still not correct, is that flicker jump is one of the few cases where a unit has a special rule as opposed to models in a unit having a special rule. So, for example, normally you'll have a model which has fearless, or with the most of the Eldar stuff, right? They have battle focus, and that's listed as a special rule. The only difference here is that flicker jump, because it's not something that applies in multiple places, is only listed. It's still listed under the special rules section, but it specifically says it's for the unit, as opposed to it being a model that applies a rule that applies to a model. So it's easy to mistake that, but the independent character rules are very, very clear on it.
It kind of sucks though, because an autark with a fusion gun would be awesome. Flicker jumping away alone.
Yeah, and like there was a discussion of this on one of the Warhammer forums online, and if you go for a theoretically rules as intended thing, it could be kind of awesome in a fluffy sense to have all these warp spiders pulling, like, all grabbing onto a guy and dragging them with him, but not how it works.
No, that's not how the rules are written. So we'll move on to the next question, which is, I've heard it before, and I was kind of trolling you with it, but Deathwing Redemption Force, which is a formation in the Dark Angels Codex where you can take two or more Deathwing squads plus one HQ and some dreadnoughts, and it basically allows you on turn 2, 3, or 4. You can pick which turn you want, and the entire detachment comes in for sure via deep strike on that turn. Now, one of the things that you can add to that detachment is Belial, and whichever unit he's in does not scatter when they come in from deep strike. Now, one thing is this formation. Usually, formations or detachments have restrictions. They'll say like you can't take transports or you can take transports. The only restrictions in this formation is that you can only take one dreadnought. You can't take units of dreadnoughts, and that dreadnought must have a drop pod so you can come in via deep strike.
Right.
But it does not say that you cannot take a Land Raider. But so I could take a Land Raider as a dedicated transport on one of my Terminator squads. But then the formation rules say that everybody in this formation must be placed in deep striking reserve. So can I actually take a Land Raider as a dedicated transport? If I can my Land Raider deep strike? And if it deep strikes and Belial's in it, does it not scatter?
Right. So this one has a very interesting answer. So the answer is yes, you can take a Land Raider. You can pay your 250 points, and then you can never use, deploy, or field your Land Raider in any form. So this one has some tricky wording. So for the Deathwing Redemption Force, pardon me, the wording of the rule is that everything in the formation must arrive via deep strike reserves. Can't start on the board in any other form.
Yep.
And it can't be in reserves in any other form. And then if you look at the way that dedicated transports wording is ruled, is that whenever you buy dedicated transport, it becomes part of the same detachment as the unit it was purchased for. Vis-a-vis, it's part of the Deathwing Redemption Force, because that's the detachment that it's part of.
Yep.
So effectively, you end up with a scenario where you could pay the points for this thing, but since it can't be in Deep Strike Reserve, it can't start the game on the table, and it can't be in normal reserves, you have no way to actually use it.
Yeah, which is how I also begrudgingly feel as well. But I just think it's like it should say that you can't take it because the formation has so few options, and they wrote a paragraph about dreadnoughts and drop pods. They could have just said you can't take Land Raiders.
Yeah, it's a bit strange that was missed.
Because some people online feel that because it says that everybody in this detachment has to go in deep striking reserves,
Yeah.
then by default the Land Raider gains deep strike and goes in deep striking reserves, even though it does not have the deep strike rule. It is in deep striking reserve.
Yeah, and
But why wouldn't it, like, by that logic, let's say, it says this unit, so if I have this Perrier can in my hand, has to go in deep striking reserves, why can it not then deep strike?
yeah, I hear you. The answer to that is because it doesn't have the deep strike rule. So it can be in deep strike reserves, in theory, but it could never actually enter play because it can't deep strike.
Yeah, which is
And there's no way to
strange,
confer
right?
the deep strike rule. It is definitely 100% a hole in how that formation is written. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But I mean, just from a rules perspective, whether it's rules as written, rules as intended, there's no way you can get a Land Raider in there. And
Oh,
I
of
think
course not.
even in a fluff perspective, these guys wouldn't be riding around in Land Raiders. They're going to teleport in and bash some Xeno scum.
Yeah, the only time that a Land Raider's ever been able to deep strike was in the Blood Angel 5th edition book.
Yep.
But that, like, the only reason I was, like, really looking into that is because I initially read it and went, oh, that's kind of cool. Wait a minute. A Land Raider Crusader or Redeemer full of Terminators guaranteed to come in turn 2 without scattering is actually terrifying.
Yep.
Comes in, even if it's the Redeemer, 2 units of bikes dead, 5 Terminators get out. Or 6, whatever it is. And then you could do the Crusader, comes in, blast some stuff, big assault units in your line. But they're like, they come in, and the Land Raider sits there and just absorbs half the army's firepower, right?
Yep.
And if they don't blow you up, you get out behind it, and then now you're hidden, and then you can charge their line pretty much unscathed with a big unit of Terminators.
Yeah, it would definitely be cool if it worked. And
But
one of the good things we are seeing is some Land Raider formations now, but this is not one of them.
Yeah, like that's the thing. They are using a lot of more, like in the fluff, Land Raiders are used a lot by Space Marines, and it's nice that they are coming up in a lot of the new formations. So anyway, next one is not a question, but the Ravenwing FAQ was changed.
Yep.
This is a while ago, but we did miss it. It wasn't that long ago.
A month ago or something.
Sorry, excuse me. So anyway, there's that Ravenwing Strike Force in the back of the Dark Angels book. I'm a Dark Angels player, so I'm fixated on this stuff. I know, guys. And basically, it said you could take Ravenwing HQ models, but everybody knows you could only take Samuel. He's the only Ravenwing HQ model.
Yeah.
Well, GW fact it that any character on a bike counts as a Ravenwing HQ model. They just don't get any of the Ravenwing rules.
Right. Yeah. So this got clarified basically the way everyone thought it would, which is if you take a character on a bike. Well, I mean, the way some things were ruling it is you become Ravenwing, which means you get your rerollable Jinx save and all that stuff. But the FAQ, is, as far as I know, again, don't have it right in front of me, basically just said you have to take a Ravenwing, an HQ with the Ravenwing rule, or a Dark Angels character on a bike.
Yeah, which is basically saying that yes, it kind of makes sense. This librarian is not Ravenwing, but he's on a bike, and so he's leading or accompanying this task force.
Yeah, exactly.
And therefore, he's making a little bit more noise and getting them all killed. Yep. Lighting his cigarette when he shouldn't at night, and then they get shot. Yep. Cool. So the next one comes from We and Joe from Toronto. This one is talking about, in ITC, so this is not standard GW. This would have to be an ITC only. There's detachments for things like Decurion, and which are basically detachments of detachments. Now, when it says that I can't double, what am I legally allowed to take for a Decurion detachment? Now, it is kind of clear in the ITC rules, but I've gotten like more than just these two guys have asked me on it. They're just but it's like, Logan, how does Decurion work with I'm allowed to duplicate one detachment? Can I take two full Decurions, or how does that work?
Yeah, you certainly could if you could fit it in the points. Basically, one of the reasons this comes up as a question pretty frequently is that the ITC list building guidelines changed pretty dramatically from 2014 to 2015. And I think actually it might have even been halfway through 2015 it changed. Basically, previously you couldn't take any duplicates at all. So you could take like a combined arms detachment, allied detachment, and a formation. But you couldn't have two formations and a CAD or two CADs, any of that stuff. Now you can. But basically what that translates into is that if you wanted to take two Decurions, you certainly could. If you wanted to take two Gladius Strike Forces, you could. I don't think you can actually fit it, mind you. But you can.
But you can't duplicate within the Decurion, right?
You can. So where this comes into play now, and I'll read the wording directly from their site.
Yeah, because it's not as clear as I would like it to be.
Yeah.
As well, like I know ITC does a lot of really great things. This is not 100% clear.
It's very convoluted. I mean, 40k list building in general is very convoluted, but this takes it up a notch. So the wording for this is: an army may be built using up to 3 detachments. An army may duplicate a single detachment one time. Example: an army may include 2 CADs but not 3, or a single CAD and 2 allied detachments, or 3 formations, 2 of which are the same formation, etc. Note, this includes Decurion-style detachments, which are composed entirely of multiple data sheets and formations, meaning a detachment made of detachments. They may only take a single duplicate formation one time within the Decurion-style detachment, although they may take multiple duplicate data slate units within the detachment. For example, Necrons may take Decurion with 2 Canoptic Harvest formations within it, but no other duplicate formations. So, in very long, convoluted terms, yes, you can take your Decurion, and yes, you can duplicate one of your formations within Decurion.
And then you can't take a second Decurion if you do that.
That's what's not entirely clear. My impression from it is that you can.
My impression is that you can't. That's the thing. We disagree on this because I feel that you can only duplicate one thing. So if you take 2 naked Decurions, that's fine as long as there's no unnecessary duplication.
Yeah.
If you take one Decurion and you duplicate two detachments within it, then you can't take a second Decurion.
Yeah. No, I definitely understand that. I think it's not 100% clear from it. With that said, if you're running double Decurion, you're probably not making a very good list.
I agree. Because you're paying the tax twice.
Yeah. What I would say for this question, if our answer isn't sufficient, which it may not be, Frontline Gaming has a question submission form on their website, and they will either address the questions through their podcast Signals from the Frontline, or in future ITC polls, or just in email responses or whatnot. So that's probably the best way to ask there. Failing that, they of course have their forums as well, which you can ask on. They're not super active, but you'll usually get a response in a couple days from someone.
Okay, so the next question is a little, uh, I don't know, kind of weird. I put it in there. I like it, but it's very, it's very dependent on where you live. But anyway, so this is from Gas Monkey on, who's a New Zealander on Twitter, heavy Warhammer fantasy player and heavy into fantasy comp. So I kind of get where he's coming from. But why is comp not accepted in 40K? And like, why is it not okay to try and balance D weapons and example 3 Wraith Knights, which was a and then there's like a happy face, which is a direct kind of tongue in cheek to my army on Sunday. So, which I get, right? Like 3 Wraith Knights is horrendous. So why is comp not accepted in 40K, Logan?
I think it depends very dramatically on where you are geographically. To my understanding, pretty much all of the West Coast tournaments, in the US at least, are running ITC. A lot of East Coast stuff is running ITC now. We're running ITC for all the events up here pretty much.
That's a new thing, though.
That
ITC.
is a new thing. So before that, to my understanding at least, there wasn't a huge amount of comp that people ran in 40K at all. But I think the flip side to that is prior to the really late 6th and 7th edition, you never really needed it.
I would say in 5th edition you didn't. And I was one of those guys. 40K was a non-comped game. It was always straight out of the book, and it was always just kind of that's the way it was. Nobody liked the comp. Because, of course, in 40K, you comp something, and it's a very... I don't like saying this. 40K is more of a rock, paper, scissors game than Warhammer Fantasy Battles was.
Yeah, I agree.
So when you comped X, Y became the new thing, and there was no way to win it. And now that did happen in Fantasy even, when they comped certain things, other builds became good, and blah, blah, blah. But 40K, there definitely was always this thing where every army had one really bad matchup. And it was how you played in your bad matchup that defined how good of a player you were and how well you did in events.
Yeah.
So I think that's why people didn't like the comp thing, because it really didn't change much. But with the release of 7th edition and D becoming insane, and Wraith Knights becoming insane, and some of the other Unbound becoming a thing, I think composition was kind of forced on us. And ITC has definitely filled that role for us here.
Yeah. It definitely is a case of it wasn't really needed before. Like, there was some really abusive stuff in 6th edition. There were some really good Death Stars. There was stuff like Ovesta Star, which everyone hated to play against. But a lot of those got taken care of through scenario design. But realistically, with some of the newer books, Eldar is a good example of it, no scenario can really balance out having 4 Wraith Knights in an army. And ATC was the prime example of that. It was a tournament earlier or I guess last year now, based entirely around progressive objective play. So objective secured was king. And out of the top 20 lists, I think, 15 were Eldar running triple or quadruple Wraith Knights.
But it's not the Wraith Knights. That's
it's the D weapons on the Wraith Knights.
No, it's not even that. They do a ton of damage. They take objectives. It's the fact that you can take 4 Wraith Knights or 3 Wraith Knights and still have 18 3-man objective secured bike units that dish out a ton of damage.
Yep.
It's not the Wraith Knights in isolation that do it for that list.
No, it's a combination for sure. But prior to where we're at now, anyway, there were many fewer options. Like even in 6th edition, you didn't have Unbound. There were definitely some abusive allies things, but I don't think it was quite to the scale it is now.
It was just Taudar. Like in 6th edition, you could literally be like, no Taudar, and like the game was okay. Like early 6th edition, there was that Necron flying spam that was kind of horrendous.
Yeah, but I didn't play super competitively back in 6th, but in 7th, I think it is absolutely needed for a few reasons. What we talked about is one of them. The other big one is that, quite frankly, trained monkeys could write more clear rules than a lot of the GW rules staff. So I think there has to be some sort of FAQ or comp to cover a lot of scenarios, because even if you just look through something like the Adepticon FAQ, right? 0 rules changes. It's like 40 pages long.
Yeah.
It's huge. And that's just clarifying rules that aren't worded properly in the rule books.
And that's the thing. Comp in ITC cases simplified rules clarifications in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Everybody knows I love ITC. ITC comp's the best. If you're gonna allow me to take 3 Wraith Knights, I'll do it. I'm that kind of guy. But I prefer ITC. I feel it's the best comp system I've ever seen for 40K. So we'll move on. Next one is from Nick Fensk, who's a guy that lives in northern Wisconsin or somewhere in Wisconsin, United States. I've met him a few times at events in Adepticon and Wapaka. His question is, what does CSM need to make them stand out and be relevant?
Near and dear to both our hearts, eh?
Yeah.
So for anyone who doesn't know, both Chris and I have huge Chaos Space Marine collections, and neither of them really see the light of day too often these days.
Yeah, so I want to start with that. Everybody will say, okay, Demonkin books for all the factions. That's okay. The Demon book's fantastic as it is. Of course, Demonkin books, when they come out, will either be hit or miss. But for me, the Chaos Space Marines lack one thing, and that's good or decent troops.
Yes. I strongly agree.
It's a tax. Right now, their troop choices is a 100-point tax, so there's no point in spamming it for objective play. If you do go for a decent troop unit, it's way over point costed. Because let's say this. This is to Kieran's point. Chaos Space Marines have some of the best units in the game, but they just don't have anything else.
Yeah, that's the thing. They've got cool stuff, but it's either overcosted, sometimes very dramatically.
The HQs are way overcosted.
The HQs are way over. Like, if you want to use Plague Zombies, which are actually really good for their price, you have to pay like 180, 200 points for Typhus, who is, depending on who you ask, but pretty terrible.
He's not good.
Yeah, like, he's not bad. He's just not good. But, yeah, they don't have a lot of synergies that they need. Like, their only battle brothers are demons, but you can't join demon units, so it's kind of useless. Like, if you're taking demons to do the psychic stuff, you need to put stuff to protect your demon units that are summoning, and at that point, just play demons and ally in a Helldrake or something.
Because I'm gonna take some of that back. Like, you can get a level 1 sorcerer for like 60 points in power armor, decent stats. He's decent. Like, he's actually good for his value. It's just that, like, there's no hammer unit, there's no firepower. It's like you could spam the Helldrakes, but you're not going to win on objective play. And I think that's what it comes down to. They can't take objectives.
They can't take objectives, and they have a problem. And we've talked about this a couple times, and a couple other podcasts bring this up. I think Forge the Narrative were the guys who really sort of coined this approach to it. Is when you're designing a list, you have to, if you can't excel in all 3 phases of the game, excluding Psychic, so all 4 phases of the game, I guess, you have to find one and absolutely dominate that in every matchup. And Chaos Space Marines have no way to do that in any of the 4 phases. Like,
yeah, I have my list that dominates, I guess, the Russian combat, but even then, it doesn't really dominate that anymore because people are faster.
Yeah, people are faster. There's other armies that even if you charge them, like if you brought that against my Demonkin, I don't know how scared I'd be, to be honest with you. But again, maybe we'll try that out sometime. But I mean, my army at that point is just as fast, it's just as killy, and it's slightly more durable. So it's a scenario where they've got sort of the best of the worst, right? They're not Sisters of Battle, but they're not good.
Well, Sisters of Battle aren't.
Yeah, that's a discussion for another time, I guess. But.
Okay, but yeah, they need an update. It would be nice to have lower point costed cult troops, more troops, cheaper rhinos, cheaper, like their Space Marines are worse than a tactical Marine, but in a battle company, they're spamming way more guys than you, and their guys are better. That's just frustrating, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if even if it was a case where the 7th edition book comes out, and I mean, worst case scenario, they get a 7th edition book. If they get some sort of detachment that could fix some holes, it could make them decent. Like, if I can take a battle company of Plague Marines, you bet your ass I'm taking a battle company of Plague Marines.
Yeah, it'll be a small battle company, but
yeah, it'll be a small amount of units, but Plague Marines are pretty durable, and they've got access to good weapons and stuff. But as it stands, it's more expensive than Space Marines, worse in every way, has access to less weaponry, less range stuff, and even the really power killer units. You're either taking a Demon Prince, in which case you really don't want to waste your points on
Not
Psychic.
Anymore.
Yeah, like you get Black Mace on a Nurgle Demon Prince. Not bad, but you don't want to upgrade him to have some mastery levels because, one, he can't roll on Biomancy from the friggin' Chaos Space Marines book, and he has to take a Nurgle power.
which is
Uh,
not. They're the better of the powers, but they're not good.
yeah, they're not good. And then on the other side, if you're taking Chaos Lords, who admittedly are pretty damn killy, they're pricey once you kit them out, which is okay. So are like Chapter Masters and stuff, but they have to challenge.
Yeah.
So you're just getting punked. And if you're getting Eternal Warrior on them, it's an extra 40 or 50 points, depending on what type of detachment you take.
Yeah, it's the lack of formations, the lack of special characters that are good, the lack of good supplements. Like they have three supplements, and really they don't add too much to it. Like there's a
Yeah.
few war gear items that I like out of the Crimson Slaughter. The Black Legion one is essentially garbage because you're going to take these really expensive Terminators that just really aren't that good for +1 ballistic skill and weapon skill.
The only reason to take Black Legion is for the Skull of Kurnagar to get Eternal Warrior.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. But then again, you have to take a special detachment of that, and you only have three in ITC, so
Yep.
it just doesn't work. And I find like if you look at like a Helldrake's 170, a Mauler Fiend's like 120. Maybe Mauler Fiends should have wounds instead of an armor value. There's a few weird things that make the army kind of crappy.
Now, I will say this. If you're playing in a meta which is a bit more friendly than perhaps the one we've sort of created is, Chaos Space Marines are a hell of a lot of fun. So if you're listening to this and you're a Chaos Space Marines player, you're just getting started with them, don't be discouraged, but don't necessarily have illusions about winning GTs with them.
Yeah, don't be afraid of allies. I don't want to say this, but Chaos Space Marines are a support codex for Codex Demons.
Yeah.
And that's what they're optimal at if you want to win a tournament. If you don't want to win and you want to just play your Chaos Space Marines, you can do some fun stuff with it. Like I probably win. I think I'm at like a 70% win ratio with my 3 units of spawn, 3 Mauler Fiends, 2 Demon Princes rush list.
Yep.
It works okay, right? But
Yeah,
Eldar's
spank
gonna
half the armies out there if they're not prepared for it, right?
counter meta. Yeah, you got to be
Yep.
counter meta, go cheap, spam some stuff, and you might do okay, right?
Yep.
These plague zombie lists, you take like 4 million plague zombies, you might actually do okay, right?
Yep.
Cool. So the next one is from Bubbles, who's from Toronto. What do Harlequin bikes provide Eldar or Dark Eldar as allies when each have their own bikes? So the Harlequin book is cool. The problem they have is they don't have an HQ. I know this is not answering his question, but I'm going to get there. Is it doesn't have an HQ, so you have to take the Harlequin troop formation. You can't take like a CAD. You can't take anything like that. And the Harlequin formation is like okay, it's not great because they haven't ruled that, right, Logan? Where if you don't have an HQ, you can take a CAD.
No, there's no way to. That's the specific thing for that kind of detachment.
So that's cool. And like most of their formations, there's a hero one which is just 3 heroes, but any of your formations where you're getting these Skyweavers, which I'm assuming are the bikes he's talking about,
Yep.
you would need to essentially pay a tax of 3 troops. And I mean like troop of that's what they're called, Harlequin troupes, troop.
Troops, yeah.
It says troop, but it's spelled like you know what I mean. It's not troops choice, but there are a troops choice actually, but they're a troop of like I don't know. I can't even. Everybody knows what I mean. So anyway, so you have to pay a tax of 3 Harlequin units, which is like not great, but it's not great. Like it's okay. It's like kind of crappy if you like. I don't know. It's cool to have like 1 Harlequin unit painted up nice, looks nice in your army, but like 3 of them is like that's a little bit too much of a tax to take bikes.
Yeah, and they're not cheap, right? Like the bikes themselves are expensive. The troops.
Well, not even the
troop
bikes
is
aren't bad.
95 points.
The bikes aren't bad to be honest for their points cost, and we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
But it's the troops. It's like you're paying 300 points for a tax.
Yeah.
So that's the number one nail in the coffin for these bikes. They look fantastic, and if you want to play with them, play with them. If you're a painter, you'll love these guys because they're beautiful when done correctly.
Absolutely.
But so then you get to the Skyweavers themselves. You've gotten past the tax, and you go, okay, I have 3 types of bikes. If I'm doing the Eldar trifecta, which means I'm taking 1 formation of each Eldar. Eldar, Dark Eldar, and Harlequin.
Yep.
So I look at there's the 3 types of bikes. The Dark Eldar bikes, they're the worst of the 3. The Skyweavers are in the middle, and then the Eldar jet bikes are at the top. And that's just because the Eldar jet bikes are one of the best things in the game. So if you look at it, you go, okay, well, the Dark Eldar ones are a little bit cheaper than the rest. Not really, actually. And then they're kind of crappy, lower save, they're fast, they don't do a lot of damage. They're okay in combat, but not great. And they're honestly a null choice. You don't really want them. But if you want, like, they look cool. My buddy Jason, he uses his as Eldar jet bikes and puts scatter lasers on them, which is not cool, but whatever.
Looks good.
And then you go to the Skyweavers. They're right in the middle. For 100 points, you're getting 2 of these guys. So I'm going to direct compare these guys to the Eldar jet bikes. So ignoring the tax, Eldar jet bikes pay no tax. They're a straight up troop choice. They get objective secured. These guys, you paid a tax to get them. But if we ignore all the taxes, because let's say you painted 3 beautiful Harlequin units, you want them, 100 points gets you 4 wounds and 2 bikes, whereas 81 points gets you 3 bikes with scatter lasers, which is 3 wounds. These guys have a 4+ save, the Harlequin ones. The Eldar ones have a 3+, so that's already a bonus. The Harlequins have better leadership, higher initiative, and higher weapon skill, which is like, okay. The Skyweavers, they come with hollow suits, which is a 5+ invulnerable. So you basically don't have to jink with them ever. They also have Star Bolas. Oh, I clicked on the wrong one. They also have Star Bolas, which is a 12-inch range, strength 6, AP2, assault 1, blast, 1 use only. But they can also shoot in addition to their guns. So that's kind of nice. So you have AP2, which is something that the Eldar lack, which allowed you to maybe pop it, that one turn when you shut down the Centurions, you pop these on them. They come with Mirage launchers, which is once per game instead of using its jink. They basically get a 4+ invulnerable save. So if it's turn 1, you can basically say, I'm using my Mirage launchers, you shoot me, it's as if I jinked, and I still shoot up my regular ballistic skill, which is nice. And then they have a Skyweaver jet bike, which comes with basically a Shrieking cannon. So that's a lot to kind of dig in.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, the hollow suit also gives them something like a rerollable jink save for 1 turn.
Nope.
Thought I saw that somewhere.
Nope.
Okay, I saw that somewhere in the book, but maybe not them.
So you're looking at this, you go, well, let's say we'll compare them to jet bikes with Shrieking cannons. They're the same thing. You're getting 1 extra cannon for the whole game, or you're getting 2 strength 6 AP2 templates, plus you can basically jink and still shoot all your weapons. So they compare quite well on that. These guys have fear and furious charge, so if they do need to charge something, they can do a little bit more damage in combat. And they have hit and run, which is always really nice. But these guys come in units of 2 to 6, and 2 wounds a pop. They're probably going to die in combat, but if they don't, they can get out and shoot, which is really handy. If there's a 5-man Marine unit, you could almost shoot them, charge them, and if you fail to kill that last guy, pop out, because he's not going to do too much damage to you. So all in all, on paper, these guys are very similar to the Eldar jet bikes. They're better in some ways, they're worse in others, I think.
Yeah, they're way more durable, I think, when you consider all their abilities to shrug off stuff with their invulnerable saves and the 4-up invulnerable save they can take, and then jink on top of that. I think, honestly, the killer for these guys is just the tax you have to pay to take them.
100%. You can even give these guys Haywire cannons, which are nice. Strength 4 template Haywire, that's nice. Battle Company, I'm shooting Haywire templates on you, it's okay.
Yep.
The cannons I'd always take, though. They're much better option. You can also replace their bolas with something I can't pronounce, which is a +1 strength, AP2/3 melee weapon.
Zephyr Glaives.
Zephyr Glaives. So you could actually make these guys decent in combat. I like them. I actually think they're not as good as scatter laser Eldar jet bikes. They're on par with the cannon Eldar jet bikes.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people like, with a little bit more utility, but they have a bad tax and bad formation.
Yeah, I think the Zephyr Glaive's 10 points a model.
Yeah, it's way too expensive.
Yeah, that's a bit much.
If you could give these guys Haywire grenades for like 5 points, then they'd be gold.
Yeah.
But, because they compare, like they have 1 more wound, 1 less save, it's all the same. So I hope that answers your question, Bubbles. It's kind of a hard one to answer. They're just as good as the other ones. Like the Dark Eldar bikes, let's be honest, you don't want to take those. But these ones are pretty good. But then again, if you're going to already put the Harlequin troops in, these guys are definitely worth throwing a unit in.
And what Bubbles says in the chat, so what you're saying is I picked the shittiest army and optimized with the shittiest bikes. Sorry, man.
Sorry.
They'll look pretty.
I shouldn't say that. Like you'll beat some people with the Dark Eldar bike spam, but it's just like the Eldar jet bikes are busted they're underpointed. They have scatter lasers on all of them with the long range. They're basically a poor design choice from whoever wrote that codex. So that's what it is. Cool. So the next one is going to be artillery. So this has come up a lot in my games. So when you have artillery, what do I have to do to to kill it, basically, Logan?
Right. So we had to double check all the ruling on this one. So effectively, artillery on its own as one piece, if it has no dudes associated with it, so no crew left, the artillery piece is removed. With an artillery battery, so a unit of them, the way it works is that you need at least one crewman per gun in order to fire all of them and move all of them. So if you have, let's say, one guy alive, one crewman alive, and 3 guns, you can't move, but you can still fire one of the guns. So there doesn't seem to actually be a requirement to have one guy alive per artillery piece that's there. So you can have one dude that's alive sitting behind the guns tanking with the toughness 7 on them, but yeah, I think the confusion around this is, do you need one guy per gun? Do you need 2 guys per gun? How does it work for a unit? But I mean, long story short, you just need one guy per gun if you want to fire all of them. Otherwise, you need at least one guy alive for the unit not to die.
Yeah, which is cool because some people say like, oh well, if you have one guy left, all your guns disappear. So if we're wrong on that one, let us know. Next question, which is a good one, it's from Gordon. With the current range, what race would you pick to start an army and why? Modeling, power level, and then I added cost to his question.
Okay.
So close your eyes. You're not even brand new. Maybe we'll say that we're both brand new, but we know all your models burned down in your house.
Okay.
That's what we're going to go with.
Okay.
All your miniatures are a smoldering pile of ruin. What army would you start? What army would you pick to start and why?
As much as it pains me to say it, I would pick Space Marines.
Why?
They are never bad. They have the most versatility of every army out there. They are, especially in the current meta, they are outstandingly good. I like a lot of the models. I like some of the stuff that people really hate. Like, I think the Centurions are the bee's knees, but people hate those things.
They're ugly.
Oh, I love them, man. But that would probably be where I'd start up again. I think the next closest thing would probably be.
So
it's tough. If I was going to
just
play an
generically,
army,
sorry, we'll just do
yeah.
generically your Space Marine. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah.
Generically your Space Marine. By modeling level, which one would you, if you're only into modeling, which army would you pick?
If I'm only into modeling, I would probably go with Qatari or Demons.
Okay. And if you're only going for power level?
Now that's a tough one. I would say would be between Space Marines and Demons.
Okay, and then cost. Which one do you think's the cheapest or no is the cheapest?
Oh, I think the cheapest army to run right now would probably be, going by retail anyway, or like a competitive list, you mean?
Yeah.
Ooh. Definitely not Space Marines.
Yeah, because you need so many,
Yeah.
like rhinos and stuff. It's crazy.
Demons aren't too expensive. It's still a couple $100. Qatari are pretty expensive. That's actually a tough question. I haven't priced it in a while. Actually, you know what? I would play Space Wolves.
Space Wolves?
Space Wolves.
Cool.
Space Wolves and like Ravenwing.
So I guess I'll do it for me. So what army would I like? Ravenwing. Because I love the models. I just think it's it's just kind of like my perfect army, and I just bought. It's all sitting in brand new boxes. So that's the army I just bought. That's what I want to play. That's the one generically for modeling. Dark Eldar and Harlequins put together. They are the best army if you're into modeling. And I know that's kind of a hats off to Bubbles, but they honestly are. They have some of the most fantastic models. They have some of the best canvases for freehand. They look really good when airbrushed. There's lots of airbrushing techniques you can do to them to make them look nice. They're very spindly in a way that they can do acrobatics. so you have lots of modeling opportunities to make them look more dynamic. Um, that's definitely for modeling. Power wise, for me is Eldar because they're the army that I win the most with. I wouldn't say they're still like they're top four books for sure.
Oh yeah,
I wouldn't say they're the best book hands down, but they're definitely right up there.
they're tippy top. Yep.
They're in like the 3 or 4 way tie, as I like to call it,
Yeah.
right now. But and it's part of it too is I know how to play them well. And then cost wise, I think that Mechanicum formation,
Or convocation.
War Convocation appeals cost wise with those new kits. Because
Oh,
for
that's a
three
good
hundred
point.
dollars you can do half of the army, and then you need one Knight Titan, which is $100. No, that's just as expensive as all the other
Yeah,
ones.
because you need the cataphrons as well, and they're not
Yeah.
cheap. Yeah, I think pretty much all the competitive lists except Gladius work out to being somewhere around $600 or $700.
Ravenwing might be the cheapest actually.
Yeah, Ravenwing is I think quite a bit less, especially
Ravenwing
if you
plus
pair
a
it with
few
Space Wolves and Lim
Space Wolf
Conclave.
characters, yeah. Yeah, I would say Ravenwing's probably one of the cheaper ones. Now, if your wife or best friend came up to you and said, "Hey man, all the models look the same to me. What's the best newbie friendly army?" What would you say?
Space Marines.
Space Marines?
Yep.
I would say Necrons.
Necrons are very very forgiving, but my concern with them, and I say this as someone who started playing Necrons a long time ago, is it's easy to get bummed out by that army because it is very samey.
Yeah.
Like you
Okay.
just have your warriors. With Space Marines, they've got a lot more long-standing fluff behind it, and I understand that Necrons had a whole bunch of fluff written about them. But on the tabletop, I see a bunch of robots. And
Yeah.
with Space Marines, I see a bunch of like badass ultramarine dudes coming at me with their guns, riding in their tanks.
Because I would almost be like Ravenwing. I wouldn't. Actually, sorry, Ron. Ravenwing Space Wolves being my number one army for new players. It does one thing: it runs at people and shoots and fights.
Yep, it's definitely very strong as well.
I think that's a very straightforward army. I think it's really good for new players. So yeah, cool. So is there any questions from the chat? We'll hand it over to you guys.
Yeah,
Any?
we had a couple here.
Okay, so we'll go through those and then we'll move on to pimping somebody's list.
All right. So Grim Reaper asks, what about the ITC FAQ for Ravenwing HQs? Yeah, it is the same as Games Workshop's, and it'll probably go away in the next revision of the ITC FAQ now that GW.
No, theirs was
covered it.
different, but they already announced that theirs is going to
Yeah,
follow GW.
yeah. So they're yeah, you're right. Actually, theirs was worded slightly differently. Basically, if a Dark Angels character took a bike, they get the Ravenwing rule.
Yeah, which was I thought was the better ruling, but I agree we should always go with GWs.
Yeah. So Welfstar asks, I'd like your guys' thoughts on toe-in cover. It's not rules as written, but I find a lot of people disagree. Should cover be true LOS 25% or toe-in defined area in your opinion? What do you think on this one, Chris? Because I know my answer.
I kind of hate tone cover, but I also hate entire model. So this is the thing, and we have a great sample. Is that the right word I'm looking for? AOS, you need the entire model in the area terrain.
Entire unit, if you go rules as written.
Sorry, entire unit, but in the entire base.
Yeah.
For the entire unit. It's actually like really hard to pull off. It clusters guys together, which makes them, there's not templates in AOS, but if it was 40k, they would get like nuked a lot easier. It's kind of weird. It's the way that people define the cover. Like, if we called less things area terrain, that tone cover wouldn't be as everywhere. You know what I mean? But I do feel like a dickhead when my Wraith Knight has like just a millimeter of the edge inside a ruin and gets a 4+ cover save. So what's your take, Logan? Sorry, I know mine's kind of like all over the map there, but it's really weird.
Yeah, I think it's a necessary evil with the way that 40k rules work. It is actually rules as written. If you look in the ruins rules and stronghold assault for the terrain rules, basically if a unit is obscured by or in ruins, note in and not wholly in or entirely in, they benefit from the ruin save. Same with stuff like rubble or forests. You don't have to be entirely within the terrain piece. So with that in mind.
But the only abuse is Wraith Knights and Gargantuan creatures.
It's like, yeah, it's
right? Like,
Wraith Knights specifically, really.
Like, vehicles still need 25% obscured.
Yeah.
I think that gargantuan creatures should also have to be 25% obscured. But infantry, it kind of makes sense. You're touching the edge of the rubble. It's to show that those guys are kind of in that area, right?
Yeah.
Like a crumbled building of that scale doesn't just like end on a board. There would be rubble everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So as I said, I'm going purely from a metagame perspective. I understand why it's like that, and I think it is a bit of a necessary evil to abstract it a bit. The other part of it is with gargantuan creatures specifically. There's so many ways you can model the GW kits, and this is somewhere that I think a happy medium has to be found because you've got the two extremes, right? You have GW where you've got multi-pose kits, which are gorgeous. You can do amazing looking scenic bases. Like you've got your flying Wraith Knight guy. And then you've got, on the far opposite end, you've got Privateer Press, where if your model's not in the default pose, maybe with his arms moved a little bit, he's not legal for tournament play.
Yeah.
So I think if
That's not really true either for private. That's us being a little bit. They do have like boxes around their models that he has to fall within.
yeah, well, yeah, they do, but they're very very specific on it for their conversion or posing policies though. If you don't go to sort of that level of detail on the GW side, which I think really hurts the hobby aspect of it, and like it or not, I think that has to be a huge part of GW with the way the game's designed. You get into a situation where you're going to have a bunch of people like Clarence. He does not actually do this. He just happens to have a model posed like this, where he's got a Wraith Knight down on one knee with like a rifle out, which is about 3/4 the height. So suddenly that building that wasn't covering 25% of you is now covering 50% of you, and you're getting your cover safe. And so you have to get in the scenario where either you're modeling for advantage, which is purely subjective and impossible to really quantify, apart from I'll know it when I see it, or you get into a situation where you need heavily abstracted rules like toe and cover.
But you only need 25% to get cover. I know Logan said 50 there for a second. That was just an example.
You do only.
Yeah, that was just an example. I just wanted to correct you there for a second.
With vehicles, it's a lot easier to tell because you can look at a face and you can say it's 4 inches long and you've got an inch covered. That's easy. But if I'm looking at a Wraith Knight, is up to both his knees 25%? Are we going by height? Are we going by actual mass?
Volume, water displacement. What are we going by?
So hard to tell. So
yeah.
I think it is sort of a hole in the rules for how gargantuan creatures happen or are substantiated in the rules compared to super heavy walkers or something. Personally, I play Tau, so I don't really care about cover so much. I'm sorry, but yeah, I think it's actually it's more complex than a lot of people make it out to be.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It should be like, I don't know. Yeah, we'll move on. We'll move on.
So we have another question here, which, given who it's from, may or may not be trolling. When a D-cannon shoots at a knight, it hits side armor. Now, if the knight player said his shield was on the right side, can I say my cannon hits the left?
Ooh, that's actually a good question. You don't think that's a good question?
I'm trying to figure out what's being asked.
He's basically saying, so when you shoot a barrage weapon and it lands on top of a tank or a vehicle,
right,
it hits side armor. And in every tank, side armor is identical to each other. But the Knight Titan gets to pick one of his sides to have a shield on. So what side does the barrage weapon hit? Now, this is the fluffy ruling.
Man.
4+ it.
Yeah, I think that's... If you hit
that
dead
might be
center,
a 4+.
If you hit dead center, I'd say you have to 4+. If it scatters, I would say you just follow the barrage rules.
But that's not where it is written. That's not, like... It's basically side armor, and so, like, there's also some kind of precedent to say that because it's your turn, you would pick, right?
Yeah, that clause is in there. That's actually a really interesting thing to get FAQ.
Because I've thought of this,
Send that into Frontline. Send that into Frontline. Because that will come up, and people will get mad about it.
I personally feel it should be 50-50, 4+ it's left, 1, 2, 3 it's right, because it's random, it's barrage, right? I think that'd be a good call. And as a TO, that's how I'd probably rule it, but...
Okay, another question here. How do you determine side and rear for non-box shaped vehicles? So Basically, pretend you have the Necron flying croissant.
Yeah.
How do you figure out what's side armor and what's rear armor?
There's two ways to do side and rear. You can do like hull or you can do um, base. Generally, you do hull. That's like the
Yep.
proper way to do it. Some people, those oval base, in the Necron Flyer ones, the oval base sideways, if you use the base, it was pretty much accurate enough because it kind of covers the outline of it. What I do is you basically, if you actually look at the croissant from a top view, it is almost a square. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So if you look at the top, it is almost a square, and then you just put your X through it. And it's pretty close. It's pretty obvious. I find for that one easy. So your actual center of the hull is in the hole in the middle. Where it's usually when the gun sticks out from the underside of the croissant, that right on the tip of that gun, depending how you modeled it, is generally the center, and then you just do your lines out from there.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same boat. If you've got a vehicle that is any sort of regular shape, whether or not it's a box, like even the croissant, right? You've got your croissant shape. You can still draw an X through it and figure out what the shape is.
But it is
Um,
tough with Dark Eldar Raiders because they're kind of like wavy rectangles.
yeah,
So I kind of use the point on the back of the prow, like there's like a front shield piece like rounded. I use that point drawn to the other one as kind of like my X for that site. And even Night Titans, right? They're kind of an oval shape.
yeah. Night Titans. What's because they're so prolific. What some companies have done is you can actually get acrylic markers that'll show the facings,
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
which is helpful. Yeah, it's something where if you create some hobby supplies for that, if you've got a laser cutter, you could probably make a good amount of money.
Maybe.
You could sell them. Whether or not you can sell bulk, I don't know, but that's definitely the kind of thing that'd be really handy to have
One
for
handy
play.
thing to do too is like on something with a base, beforehand, sit in your basement, get some measuring out, build a square on it, and mark the base with white lines to
Yep.
where the edges are. You could do that. One thing you could do also, depending on what kind of movement you have, is you turn the thing and you go, what's in, and you kind of have that discussion with your opponent. I turned him 90, I could turn him up to 90 degrees. I'm turning him so that all these guys are in the front and these guys are in the side. Is that cool? Does that look legal to you?
Yep.
And then the guy will say, okay. And then if he moves this unit in the side, and you're like, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's realistically the best way to approach it is have that discussion with your opponent.
Which
And
kind of sucks if you're in a hurry at a tournament or something. But and
yeah,
if the other guy starts, like, that's kind of good play. But if the other guy starts niggling you, like, no, it's not. Like, there's nothing you can do about that.
no, there really isn't
But
unless
like
you sit
karma
there
bite.
with. Yeah, exactly. And I think that is one of the scenarios again to go back to like the long war guys. They always talk about keeping your opponent involved in the game, the social contract that goes with it, and making those type of calls with your opponent to have those discussions. I think is a really important thing, both on a sportsmanship standpoint, but also dealing with the fact that some of these rules are a little less than clear for things like that.
Yep. And and like 99.99% of war gamers are totally cool dudes that are just as nerdy as you are. So
Exactly.
so okay, what's any other questions from the chat?
That is everything we've got for rules clarifications, but we do have a few other questions that we can hit at the end of the show that I've got marked down.
Cool. Yeah, because it is a Q&A show. This isn't a normal format. This is a lot of questions. Most shows we have other stuff, but it's cool to catch up on stuff like this every once in a while. Okay, so next one is this is from John Chastain. It's a new segment. We're not going to do these very often. We've been wanting to start with this a little bit. It's Pimp My List. So if you send us your list, now I don't want we can't do a list a week. We can do a list a month or every 2 months or 3 months, like if something's good or cool. But since John used to be a hardcore fantasy player with us, he wanted to kind of get us to help him out with some advice on a Space Marine army that he wants to do. Now he basically in his intro gave us a bunch of restrictions that we have to work within. So this is going to be very generic, but he wants it to be a Salamanders army, which means has to be Space Marines. And this grants him feel no pain against Flamers' weapons and reroll wounds when using Flamers. So if you're going to make a Salamanders army, I think he wants to gear it more towards Flamers, which is fluffy and uses their rules, right? Next one, Vulcan, his stand has to be his HQ, and it gives Mastercrafted to all Meltas, Multi-Meltas, and Combi Meltas. So basically, you have to include a lot of Meltas, and this means that his Stern Guard can shoot their special ammo via mastercrafted weapons. So, he wants Vulcan. We have to follow that. Those are his go-to weapons. And Skyhammer formation means I take 2 Assault Squads and 2 Devastator Squads. Um, but those guys are not affected by his Vulcan, correct?
Right, because they're a separate detachment.
Yeah. So they don't get that at all, but they're still a good option depending on what he's going to do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do a quick run through his draft list, and then we'll just kind of give a little bit of advice and or tweaks, but we're not going to run through several lists because that just might get repetitive. So the first one, Salamanders, he has Vulcan. Under Elites, he has Legion of the Dam with Melta-Guns and a multi-Melta, which I think is pretty cool. Do they get the Chapter Tactics rule from him?
Yes, they do. They're in the same detachment, so they get their mastercrafted Melta-Guns.
Which is awesome, because then they have basically slow and purposeful, so they can come in, shoot their Melta weapons, master-crafted, and they fire at full ballistic skill with their multi-Melta.
Exactly, and their Melta-Gun and their Combi Melta.
So he has 3 of those 5-man Legion of the Damned units with Melta-Gun and multi-Meltas. Then in troops, he has a tactical squad with a Melta-Gun, 5 of them, in a drop pod. Then he has 5 more in a drop pod. Then 5 more in a drop pod, all with Melta-Guns and Combi Meltas. Fast attacks, he has an Assault Squad with 2 times Flamers, Assault Squad with 2 times Flamers, Assault Squad 2 times Flamers, all in drop pods. So he's going essentially, for the, guys, again. He's going for the drop pod army, right?
Yep.
Okay, so my first criticism is, how many units does he have to add to make this a battle company?
You think you need 4 more tactical squads, and I think
No
that's
assault
about
squads
it.
in the Space Marine book, right?
No, you have to take a fast attack choice. It can be an assault squad, it can be an attack bike, or land speeders. So the other thing, to make it battle company, you have to take one of the auxiliary detachments. So you're taking like a couple units of scouts or something.
And there is no Legion of the Damned in a battle company.
No, you can't take them, as far as I know.
So cool. So basically, what I was getting at there is that rules out making this a battle company if he wants Vulcan and his Legion of the Damned.
Yeah. Which isn't the end of the world by any means, but it's not something that's going to be viable to change to that for sure.
Yeah.
My other concern about it is Legion of the Damned are incredibly expensive for what you get. Getting mastercrafted and relentless on that stuff is really nice, but equally nice is taking Skyhammer and just using your Devastator Doctrine, because you can kit them out with all the same weapons on your Devastator squads. They still get relentless. They get your pinning tests, and they get to reroll to hit entirely. Instead of
You get rid of those 3 Legion squads, you're getting your tactical squads to make it a battle company.
Yeah, you swap those out. You drop one of your assault squads and just keep the 2 you need for. Actually, you keep all of them because you need them for Battle Company and Skyhammer. But drop the assault squads down to 5-man. Still keep double flamer, but keep them as 5-man because honestly, assault squads are not that great.
Yeah, you never want to have full Space Marine units. You want to have MSU.
Well, yeah, the exception to that is tactical squads, right? Because you can what's the term? Basically, you split them into combat squads. So,
yes, but ultimately, if you're better off taking the 5-man units and going for the battle company.
Yes, if that's the only way to get battle
So
company.
he has one of his tactical squads here. So 2 of them are 5-man, one of them is a 10-man. You just split that into 2 5-mans. You're already halfway, and the drop pod becomes free in battle company.
Yep.
So it doesn't even add that much more cost. It adds 10 points for a Melta-Gun.
Yeah. I think if you're going to take this, now the trick there.
Yeah, make it battle company and give it all Melta and Flamers.
Yeah, the problem there though is there's no way to run Vulcan in a battle company. You can only take a captain or a chaplain.
Oh, you can't take a. No, you can take it as a. I'm gonna look that up right now. Give your next set of feedback.
Yeah, you'd have to take a cat or something. I think all the Melta is good. I think maybe a mix of Melta and Grav. Because the problem with Melta is it's very, very good at killing things, but it's very, very good at killing single things, right? If you've got your Devastators are dropping in with Skyhammer, and they've got Grav cannons, you're getting 5 shots that are rerolling to hit from Devastator Doctrine, and they're rerolling to wound or to pen, instead of getting a single shot that's rerolling to hit and nothing else. One thing that's just brought up in the chat is Vulcan is a captain, so there may be some clarification. If he can be taken as captain of a battle company, then yes,
yes, he can.
Okay,
He can. I thought he could. Sorry, when you mentioned that, that's why I wanted to double check it, because he is a captain and he is in the brackets in this section. So.
Oh, he is awesome. Yeah, definitely. Then take him, run it as a battle company, make a few changes.
Yeah, add a chaplain.
Yeah,
split your 1 tactical squad to 2. You only need 1 assault squad, so maybe drop an assault squad for a tactical squad, and then it'll make all your drop pods free, which will be amazing.
You'll save a bunch of points.
You'll have to add 2 Devastator squads. Now, your Devastator squads, I would probably make them Grav, and just say screw Vulcan's bonus.
Well, you don't get the bonus anyway for CanHammer. Devastator. Oh no, because you have to take Devastators.
You need Devastators in battle company. That's what I've been getting at.
Yeah. For the battle company ones,
I would drop the CanHammer if you're doing the drop pod battle company, which I know isn't optimal for some of the guys out there. I would definitely drop the CanHammer. Go pure battle company. Maybe you could fit a CanHammer in as well, but if you can, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you take as an auxiliary choice in that list?
Scouts. Always Scouts. The rest of the auxiliary choices aren't very good for Space Marines. You end up buying like land speeders, which are exceptionally bad, or you get like whirlwind formations or really, really expensive ones.
So that's what, the 10th Company Task Force? So 3 to 5 units of Scouts.
Yeah, it works out to I think 180 or 200 points or something for the Scouts. And Scouts are never bad, right? You get Bolters, you get Stealth, hang out in your ruins with move through cover. They're great at holding objectives.
What most people take is the suppression force around here. One whirlwind and 1 land speeder.
Oh yeah, I've played against that before. It's not good though.
No, it's not good, but it's also cheap.
Yeah, it's cheap. The Scouts are a better choice though, unless you're really, really pinching points.
I would agree with that. No, you don't want Hunters and Stalkers. I was gonna say like just Hunters maybe. Which one's it? Stalker's the anti-air, right?
Stalker's the anti-air one's really
maybe a
bad.
unit. If it was just 1 unit of Stalkers, I'd maybe take them.
Yeah.
But no, it's not. It's 1 unit Hunters and Stalkers. You don't want that.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what I would probably gear my list towards, John. When you're thinking about pimping it, is if you want to do the draw pods, your current list doesn't make sense because you're so close to being able to get the free pods, which means you're running probably 9 pods, which is times 35 points is a lot of points that you're saving.
315 points. Now the other problem in this list, and I do know that you have some points to spare. Like this list is only 66 points.
Yeah, because you wanted to know what we would add or tweak.
Right. So the problem is you've capped out your fast attack slots, and your Legion of Damned are on foot. Yeah, he's got 3 fast attack slots. He's got 3 assault squads.
That's if he's a CAD.
If he's a CAD, which this is.
Okay, yeah. If you're running this as a CAD, not a battle company, you've capped that out.
Which means, Legion of the Damned deep strike, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's fine then.
They deep strike on their own. Legion of the Damned are actually fantastic.
Yeah. They're good. They're just pricey. They're similar to Stern Guard in a lot of respects. They're a bit of a one shot wonder, right? They come in, they kill something, and not quite as bad as Stern Guard. They're not immediately diminished in power, but for the most part, they can be ignored, right? They're moving 6 inches. They've got short range weapons.
But he's basically trying to capitalize on the Melta from Vulcan, which is because if you think about Master Crafting is generally 15 points, so I kind of get it that for every Melta gun he takes, he's basically getting 15 points of value for free.
Yeah.
But I would say 1 Legion, if you really want your Legion of the Damned squad, take 1 because they're fantastic. But it's not going to fit with your battle company drop pod army. You'd have to do it that way.
Yeah, if the goal is to really go for that heavy objective play, have a lot of drop pods, definitely go Gladius Strike Force.
Why Gladius? Oh, that is the
battle company.
Yeah. I just call it battle company.
And it does mean tweaking some things, buying some models and whatnot, but it fits your theme. You can still take all the Melta you want. You can take all the Flamers you want. You can take every unit that's here except for the Legion of the Damned, and if you really want them, I think Legion of the Damned have their own detachment you can take, which is just Legion of the Damned guys. So you can still fit everything you want in there.
But the Legion guys won't get the Master Crafted, which doesn't follow the theme of your army. So cool. So I guess we can end with that. If you want any more help, John, I hope that gave you a step in the right direction. But yeah, number 1, make it a battle company, right, Logan?
Yeah, number one, Battle Company. Number two, 5-man assault squads, keeping the double flamers. And number three, uh, take more tactical squads.
Well, you have
But
to for that.
yeah, they're the best thing in the game.
Yeah, and then you will have some points for some play in that list, but
Yep.
it'll be fun. Cool. So I guess we'll finish off the Q&A. That's a little bit off topic, and then we'll finish up the show.
Yeah. So we had a question from Bubbles here. One question I forgot really one answered. Blasters or heat lances on my Dark Eldar bikes? I'm hoping lances, as that's what they all have.
Okay, then keep your lances. I like blasters.
Yeah. What are the stats on them? I play against Dark Eldar like once a year.
Okay, so you go to the next question, and I'll look that up.
Okay.
Just to make sure that we don't look like idiots and get it wrong. Well,
So-
we always look like idiots.
Next question, also from Bubbles. Do you think Slanesh will ever make a return to Age of Sigmar? That's the only thing that will get me back in. I
think so.
I think so. Because it's sort of a parallel dimension timeline thing, who knows? But the problem is that if Slanesh doesn't come back, the Eldar never falls, the Dark Eldar never happen, and then do you just write out an entire army of 40k? You write out an entire line of models? Like, it doesn't really make sense. The other thing, and again, I don't have this model, so I don't know for sure, but as I recall, the new Arcan model does actually have a Slanesh emblem on him. So
He doesn't have the head, though. So that was a gift from... It's missing the Slanesh head. It also doesn't have a rat head, though, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I would say if they have mentioned them in the fluff, if they were going to remove Slanesh from the game, they would have removed him from the fluff. So the fact that they mentioned his followers in the fluff means he still exists, because otherwise they wouldn't have any followers. So I think there's going to be a campaign or story arc that's involved with freeing him, and I think it's going to be a PG-13 version
yeah.
of Slanesh. Well, it's already basically that way. They're punk rock chicks.
Yeah, they've toned down Slanesh a lot compared to what it was in the 90s, even early 2000s. But yeah, I think it's Slanesh is gonna come back in a slightly more family friendly form.
Yep. So you want to go to the Heat Lance Blaster thing?
Yeah, let's go back to
So
that.
Heat Lance is Strength 6, AP 1, Assault 1, Lance Melta,
Okay.
18-inch range. Blaster is 18-inch range, Strength 8, AP 2, Assault 1, Lance. So do you want Strength 6 Melta or Strength 8, AP 2, Lance?
They're both good.
Yeah, they're both good. I think you could keep the Heat Lances and you'll be just fine.
Yeah, you'll be fine. That'll deal with a lot of stuff. I think the blasters are better, but the
Because
heat
you could
lances are
hurt,
not bad.
Wraith Knights with blasters. You can't hurt Wraith Knights with Heat Lances. But you have enough poison.
Wait,
No,
why
it's only
not?
poison on 6 anyway.
They're poison. Oh,
Everything in the army is basically poisoned.
heat lances? Oh, sorry, no, the other way around.
Yeah,
Blasters
the other
are
guns.
poison, right?
No, none of them are blasters or Heat Lancers are not poisoned.
Ah,
I
okay,
was just saying there's so much poison in the Dark Eldar book,
Yeah.
but it only affects them on 6s anyway. So
Yeah.
I would say either is good. You know what? They're close enough that if they're already mauled with Heat Lances, I would definitely leave them. But if you're putting a new unit, give them blasters.
Yep, I'm with it.
Ooh, yeah, because Heat Lance is AP1, so it's like...
Yeah, it's really good at popping vehicles, right? It's strength 6 Melta AP1 with Lance.
Yeah.
That's really good. You roll average.
And it's 18 too, so you only need to get within
9
inches.
on
Yeah.
a bike. Yeah, so you roll average on your Melta, you're getting a pen against any vehicle in the game.
So
That's
one's
pretty
good versus vehicle, and one's more all rounded. They're the same points cost. Yeah, actually, you can't go wrong with either. I'm gonna stand by that.
Yep, they're both good.
Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah, we got from Nick. Do Grey Knights have a chance to hang at the top?
Yes, they do. They're the most underrated book in the game. They're fantastic as allies, and they're fantastic on their own. They're just underused and not really played very well.
Yeah, I think they're a solid mid-tier army. I would not say they hang at the top, and the main reason I say that is because they have really two good things, right? They've got Drago, who's great, and they have Dread Knights, which are great.
And they have Purifiers, which are fantastic in drop pods with the Blood Angel formation.
Yeah, they're okay.
They're fantastic.
They're pricey.
But they add so many psychic dice to like a Librarius Conclave, and they add like the problem is you can't think of Grey Knights in a vacuum. Like everybody thinks of Grey Knights in a vacuum. You could do a primary Grey Knights and supplementary Space Marines, and they're fantastic.
And you'd have nothing from the Grey Knights attachment that scores.
Yeah,
That's the
that's good
big
enough.
problem they have is they can't deal with a lot of objective secured spammy armies.
But they're not a weak.
They're not
People
weak.
think they're
They're not
weak, but they're
weak.
not.
They
Yeah.
they have they have holes in what they can control where you need to plug in allies, or you have to go balls to the wall spam. But they're not bad by any means. But they are challenging to play well and to be really successful with. I think.
Upper middle tier for sure.
Yeah, I'll give
They
you
could
that.
win a tournament if you got a little bit good
Yeah,
matchups.
I'll definitely give you upper middle tier, given that they've got Battle Brothers for all the Imperium of Man.
Okay.
Okay, next question from Lord Draconis. Do you guys think drop pods are competitive in ITC as Gladius or Skyhammer plus CAD? Drop pods are always a good choice. It seems for who takes what, it seems to vary a lot based on local meta. Whether you take like all rhinos, all drop pods, or a mix. Both are very good. Yeah, so the answer is yes. So is Skyhammer plus CAD. If you're doing that,
I wouldn't do
I,
Skyhammer plus cat.
yeah, I wouldn't. It's
I
not
would
bad.
not.
I would rather take the Battle Company though. If you're
Like
doing,
if you're talking Skyhammer plus CAD and you're talking 1 to 3 drop pods in the CAD, yeah.
yeah,
Like just a supplementary, but your CAD is primarily to do other stuff. Yeah. But ultimately there's Gladius or there's the Lion formation from the Dark Angels. Those are awesome to do drop
yeah,
pod lists with and spam the drop pods and you'll win objective play in ITC. Like you'll win the secondary every time.
yeah. It's too hard to kill that much stuff. 'Cause you
I personally
basically,
find Skyhammer too expensive.
yeah, Skyhammer is pricey. The only problem I really have with Skyhammer is that the assault squads are okay, but they're not good. And the Devastators, depending on how you kit them, can either be all around crap or they can be all around good, but they're still not good against some armies. Because the main strength of them is the pinning that they get. Like, the being able to shoot and be relentless is good, don't get me wrong. But the really brutal thing is the 3d6 pinning just from having targeted something. Against things that are fearless or can't be pinned like monstrous creatures, it's not good.
Yeah.
Like, your entire formation bonus basically goes to waste there. So, Skyhammer is strong. You combine it with a CAD and maybe another detachment. It's definitely not bad by any means. I think the better choice out of those two is to go Gladius with the pods, because you will never lose objective play. I don't think.
Yeah, like
you could.
and some people say 12 pods is too many, but I with my Eldar I can't kill 12 pods.
And Nixter brings up a good point in the chat here. Skyhammer works pretty well with the new Raven Guard detachment, where you get all the turn one charges.
Yeah, that is awesome. Sorry.
forgot about
Skyhammer
that
with
one.
that new Raven Guard detachment is fantastic. Somebody played that and I forget where it was and it was like awesome. Like it's super pricey, you're an elite army and you have to really play well and your initial shock has to work, but if it does you win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. It's a very good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Nixter. And then the last question we have in the chat here: did you guys just do a list review? Yes, we did. Where can I send a list if I want it reviewed?
Who said that in the chat?
I think that was also Nixter.
Cool. Yeah, canhammer.podcast@gmail.com. We won't be doing them regularly. This was, but we will. If there's a good list review, we will do it every couple of shows if we have a slow news day or something like that. Like we thought today was kind of a slow news day, but it ended up that we ended up getting way more questions than we anticipated.
Which is great.
So,
Thanks for joining us, guys.
yeah, which is fantastic. But yeah, so send it to canhammer.podcast@gmail.com and we'll try to get to it. I can't promise that because I could say that and then I'll get 15 lists and I'll be like, oh.
Yeah, the next podcast is just going through lists.
So that's it for our show. It was a rather long one, but that's fantastic. We had a lot of interaction. We're very happy for that. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any feedback or comments or you want to send a list in, we do question and answers on every show. We just normally do 2 or 3 questions. But if we get tons, we'll save it and do another Q&A show. If you want more information about the show or the podcast, you can go to oneplusarmor.com or canhammer.com. One Plus Armor is the YouTube kind of Canadian branch that we have, and CanHammer is like the podcast branch for iTunes. This show can be downloaded this Thursday via iTunes. If you tuned in late and you want to hear the first half. It can also be downloaded in the next couple weeks not downloaded, but watched on YouTube, on the One Plus Armor YouTube channel. I think that's it. Anything else you want to talk about, Logan?
Nope, that's it. Thanks for joining us, guys. We really do appreciate all the questions and you guys hanging out with us.
Yep, and so have a good one, guys. Our feed is going to turn into the Frontline Gaming Battle Report in 6 minutes.
Absolutely.
So if you stick around for 6 minutes, you'll get bumped into their feed, and then you'll have to switch over to theirs for the chat to watch their battle report. And we get a head nod for the amount of followers that we kind of ship over. So cool. Have a good one, guys.
Good night.